Hey everybody, it's Steven GetMoneyMyrick here, and in today's video I'm going to be discussing the new Smash mechanic within the Guild War. I'm going to be giving my thoughts about it, where I think it makes sense to be using it, and kind of testing how it works because I have some ideas about how it might work, but I kind of want to just confirm that that's how they work and see what we can learn from it. Before I get into this video, I did want to say that if you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I try to make educational Idle Heroes content for people while also having some fun. Let's go ahead and check out this smash button and see what we can do. So clicking on the smash button now, and one interesting thing is that it will automatically populate with what your last Smash Guild War lineup set was, which is interesting to know. So if you have a team that you've already kind of set up and you've got bases you've already set up, you can see it goes ahead and holds onto those teams. You can see here as well that you can adjust your pet, which is helpful and nice. And you can see that you can move your teams from base to base. And it also is showing you what the power level is at each base, as well as the buffs that you have at that base. One thing that I definitely wish it would show, just looking at it right now, is I wish it would show how many teams are at each base, because that would avoid you having to go into this forward info here and see how many opponents there are. In our particular case, you know, these bottom three have 12. But it doesn't show us anywhere in here that they have them. So DH Games, if you could fix that, that'd be great. It gives you a good idea about what the average power per base is, which will give you an idea in general about which bases are simplest. And you can decide whether you're going to use your best teams on the weakest forts or your best teams on the strongest forts, depending on what your strategy is and what you like to do. But that would just be helpful information. But you can see you can go ahead and you can, change your lineups around and do everything. There is power associated with these lineups right now. And what my big question is like, can you save a lineup with, the gear pre-selected? Basically, it'd be the ideal world that would save everybody the most time is if you could actually go in and set a team with the gear that you want and say, lock in this team with this gear because I'm able to create it with my current resources. And then you could go down and do the same with every single team. That seems like that's probably way too difficult for DH Games to program based on what they've said in the past about gear presets. But that would have been the ideal situation. And looking at how it's set right now, I'd be extremely shocked if that's what we're getting. Instead, we're getting a much easier way to move your teams around. But where it's going to be difficult is going to still be for people that like to move gear onto different heroes, specifically because you'll have to be keeping track of which hero you are that are putting in the base. One thing you may be able to do possibly if you always keep the same gear on your E5 heroes is, you could at least keep them in here with the gear they need. And then you could go through and you could deselect all the heroes that you kind of switch up to figure out which ones you're selecting, because it does get confusing about like which Amun-Ra copy is this, which one of them is it in my bag, and especially even if it's in the first lineup here, you could put the first lineup in your first team, the first Amun-Ra on the first team, but as time goes on and you move these teams around, you're going to get confused about where you need to be putting your gear, which means that if you were the type of person that was selecting gear for all of your heroes in the first place, that this won't save you a ton of time. What it will save you time with, though, is moving the lineups around just to different bases. And where that can be helpful is if, like, I have a Mim team, for example, and so Garuda is very strong against Mim. So if I'm looking for bases that don't have very many Garudas in them, to get the most on my Mim team, it will be easier for me to move this entire team and all the heroes over to that new base. But we are going to go ahead now. I got to think about how I want to do it, and we're going to check and see if there is a way to save the power of your heroes and kind of lock them in. I'm assuming there's not, but let's go ahead and try that out. So we're going to do this by looking at my Athakwa, and I'm basically not going to change anything about her right now, and we're going to set her in Guild War as her own little team. So if we come up here and we get rid of all of these heroes, we can see that our Athakwa is 851, 842. And no, there's just no way that it saves it because I can't like lock in this team, because you see if I X here and then bring it back up, then it's still there. So it's like I can't lock it in, and the only option I have is battle. And if I click battle, presumably it's going to run through and battle all forts all at one time. So as far as I can tell, there's just no way that it's going to be saving the individual gear presets, individual gear for a specific team, which means that this still unfortunately is not that huge of a time saver for the people that are really trying to get the most out of their guild points. What I will say though is that this is obviously still an upgrade for most players. Most players I assume are smashing most of the time. This saves you, having to push the button 10 times. It saves you time of, moving your lineups, and you can be smarter about your lineups and where you're putting them, which is very helpful. And I know I smash, most days except for days that are hard, right? So I'll look at our opponents and see, is this a top guild? Which I'm not going to name any top guilds other than Revenge in this channel, but if you're a top guild and you're watching my channel, who you are. If we're not playing against a top guild like that, I typically am smashing. And so this allows me to just be slightly smarter with my smashes. So that's great. Unfortunately, it does not help too much for people that are automatically setting gear. Obviously helps some. But it's not perfect. If it was perfect, it'd actually be really interesting to see like what guildmate scores were, because most people are lazy. It's an idle game. You don't want to be, spending 45 minutes going through managing your team every day, or at least most people don't. And so it'd be interesting if people that are typically a little bit more lazy were able to like make their absolute best teams and keep those, kind of how power within our guild would change, because there's definitely certain people that try harder than others. And all the power to them for doing that. But if everybody was kind of on an equal footing of having like their best teams all the time, that would also make it kind of interesting, but also make it harder, right? Because right now you're rewarding the people that are doing the most, and they should be rewarded in a way, but you're hurting, the people that are lazier. So I just wanted to show that off. Obviously, I think adding the amount of forts, the amount of people you can fight against on the left-hand side here would be extremely helpful. It would save you having to go into the fort info. Unfortunate that we can't save, the specific gear setups. So people are going to have to make that choice about equipping all their heroes or still doing it one by one. So you're basically like in the same boat that you were in before, but now it's just easier to move the lineups and move things around. So overall, happy that it's here. Should make some players easier to manage. Some guild members that maybe whine about having to do guild wars. It's like, look, buddy, we're already skipping the first 2 days. Like it's 4 days a month, 8 days or 8 days a month, 4 days every 2 weeks. And all you have to do is come in here and at least push the smash button for me just to get some points. And then we can, gauge your skill based off of that. So glad it's here. Wanted to show it off. Hopefully you learned something in this video, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.